Medieval Europe was the birthplace of torture. Which ones have you heard of? If you were one of the tortured, what kind of pain would you experience? We'll continue our list of 10 deadly torture devices from ancient times. Number 10. The apega. This torture device may look harmless on the surface, but one deadly embrace from her could end everything. Apega's arms are lined with long, sharp spikes. When the wooden planks in front of her chest are triggered, her spiked arms will quickly close. A single embrace could puncture an upper limb, or he'll be killed by a heart attack. To prevent the prisoner from escaping, Picard's arms are equipped with huge spring clamps. He used the principle of leverage to create a device similar to a bear trap. Once caught, it was very difficult to escape. It is said that the Spartan tyrant Nabis made this device in the image of his wife Apega to torment those who displeased him. He would often hand over those who disobeyed him to his wife. Number 9. Bronze bull on fire. This was a cruel punishment invented by the ancient Greek coppersmith Pelori. They put criminals in a bull made of copper, and then baked them over a flame on the outside of the bull. Because copper conducts heat so well, the criminal was burned to death inside the bull, and watched as he was roasted to death. The inside of the bull is equipped with a sound pipe. As the criminal screams in despair, the conduit transforms the prisoner's voice into the bull's roar. It must be said the invention of the bronze bull was the ultimate in perversion and cruelty. Number 8. The Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden resembled a humanoid coffin filled with long, thin nails. The bottom is a removable wooden board. To execute, you simply raise the maiden. The moment the door is closed, the nails would be driven into the victim's body. And then the bottom board is removed. Under the force of gravity, the victim will slowly slide down and suffer the pain of flesh, tearing, and eventually, the victim would be slowly tortured to death. Of course, this torture device can also be used to kill a person immediately. You just need to drive the nails into the place where you want them to be, such as the eyes or the throat. This way, the prisoner's blood will be better circulated outside the body. Number 7. Ducking stool. This seesaw of death is also very creative. It can be used in a lake or a pool, or of course, a septic tank. The prisoner is tied to a chair in front of the seesaw. By pulling the horizontal beam vertically, the prisoner will be inundated with water. It won't take long for the cold to induce shock, and the closed air will cause accelerated respiration and a lack of oxygen to the brain. In the end, the victim would take an involuntary breath and die of drowning. Number 6. Crucifixion. I'm sure you're all familiar with this torture device. The method of execution is quite simple and brutal. First, the victim is tied to a stake. Then the victim's limbs are fixed with long nails. At this point, the victim's body is completely immobilized by the force of gravity. But the victim did not die from the pain of the nails in his arms and legs. They died of suffocation because after being crucified, the weight of the body was concentrated on the wrists. This tension would compress the diaphragm so that the victim could only breathe in and not out. But the cross was usually used to execute rebels and slaves, but it became a Christian symbol symbolizing God's love and salvation for the world. Number 5. Wheel torture. It's a kind of punishment in which a person is tied to a wheel and crushed to death. Its structure is a cylinder made of 2 wheels. The victim is tied face up to the surface of the wheel. Then the wheels are rolled down a hill. Using gravity, the victim would hit the ground again and again. Each impact is like a car crash. By the time the wheel came to a stop, the victim was almost dead. Later, the executioners upgraded this punishment to manual rotation and rolled the victim over a fire or bed of nails. It must be said people at that time had a lot of ways to punish criminals. Number 4. The pear of anguish. This is a seemingly non-lethal punishment, but it was much more painful than death. It looks like a medical dilator. It is used by placing it in the victim's mouth and turn the bolt at the back. The front blades will continue to expand until the victim's jawbone is shattered. Then the criminal's mouth will be in a shrugged state. It's worse than death, in fact, besides the mouth. The pear of anguish can also be used on the lower half of the body. As for the details, you can figure it out by yourself. Number 3, Wicker Man. It's rumored that the Wicker Man's tortures evolved from an ancient Celtic ritual. They would tie criminals and prisoners of war to giant wicker figures, and burned them and sacrificed them to the tree gods to beg for rain. But as the saying goes, it's not the death that's scary, it's the waiting for it that's scary. It's said that the Wicker Man could execute dozens or even hundreds of people at a time. And during the burning process, the victims not only had to undergo a long process of burns and inhalation injuries from the smoke, until all of them are roasted into dried meat, the punishment is not really over. Number 2, Pendulum Axe. This is the most horrific of all the torture devices. By swinging the axe back and forth, it can cut off the person's waist little by little, and the victim could watch himself being chopped in half with his own eyes, although it sounds creepy. But the actual damage is not that great. Someone once conducted an experiment. In the experiment, the swinging axe could barely make a few centimeters of cuts in the flesh, and the axe would disperse its energy as it touched the object. It can't achieve the effect of cutting the flesh. So it's not the punishment itself that's scary, it's the fear inside the victim. Number 1, Roman Colosseum. This is the largest of all the torture devices in everyone's mind. The Roman arena was just an arena for beasts and duelists. But the Romans used it to execute many prisoners and slaves. The underground had extremely complex mechanisms, with an advanced elevation system. They would throw the slaves in first, and then the beasts underneath the cellar would be lifted up by an elevator. When the cage was raised to a certain position, by releasing another rope to open the door, the beasts would enter the arena through this portal and bite the slaves alive, and then eat them. Over the centuries, some 100,000 captives died in the arena. That makes it the most murderous torture device in history. So which one do you think is the most brutal?